Hi, I'm Pete, and that's my 1998 Valkyrie 1500. And we live in North Texas, a little town called Argyle, just about 6 miles south of Denton. So it's been pretty hot here lately. But I've been riding the Valkyrie pretty much all summer long, anytime I can get a chance. And I've got a little sailboat about, oh, 8 miles from here, and typically I'll get up first thing in the morning and get out. And if there's any wind, I'll get out on the boat and put on a cool vest. And when I come in from the boat, usually it's right after lunch. It might be like 100 degrees or something, and I ride back. And the bike really hasn't been too hot. It's been pretty good, but typically I'm riding, 45 miles an hour or something in fifth gear, and the revs are down on it. Maybe most of the time the revs are even down like below 2,000 RPMs or something like that because I go slow on back roads. And the bike really hasn't been bad, especially, I charge up my cool vest before I come home. And I figured, like, wow, this thing, I got to convince my wife to go to New York and visit her sister so I can put camping gear on the Valk and ride out of Texas to Colorado and do a tour where I cover some ground instead of a tour with her that kind of pokes along. So I said, well, let me see what this bike's going to be like. And I got it out on the interstate, which is comfortable as hell, not like my other bikes. And I thought I was going to melt my shoes. So it's got 6 exhaust. And especially the number 5 and the number 6 headers, where they come out right here. And then the number 5 and 6, they go right along the inside of the foot pegs. They throw nasty heat. So, I was going down the road, and I had to put my feet up here on the foot pegs. So, it really, I don't mind using highway pegs some, but I certainly don't want there to be much traffic around. And, I really like to have my feet on the control foot pegs as much as possible. So I'm kind of envisioning myself getting up here near Denton first thing in the morning before sunrise with the bike all loaded up with camping gear and basically trying to make Amarillo by lunch before the temperatures go above 100 degrees. And I was thinking that I'd be able to start putting on cool gear. The cool gear I'm using this wet vest right here. And then if it gets real bad, I can put these frog togs, which are 6.5 inches by 33 inches, and use them I tuck them into these quick dry shorts that I wear instead of underwear, and into my socks, and I use them as wet chaps. And typically the bike's not that hot. I really don't need that, but if you got caught on a record heat day trying to go across Texas, you could use all the help you can get, and I don't want to get dehydrated or overheated or anything like that. So back to what I wound up doing. I wound up getting to the point where I wanted to try shielding my feet. And of course, my shielding is butt ugly. I used 4-inch by 6-inch flashing roof. It's just roof flashing, so it's pretty cheap to do this. And I cut slits in them, and all the flashing is basically held on with hose clamps. And here's the basic flashing that I use, 4x6 flashing. And of course it's friggin' butt ugly, but it makes a huge difference. And so over here, I originally had this one on without any muffler packing behind it. So like what I did was, where it made sense, before I put the flashing on, I put muffler packing. And I was kind of thinking that I didn't have this return on here until after I put the muffler packing on. There's another piece underneath this that's kind of all cut up so that I can put it in place. But I was kind of thinking that this would be like an air dam, and maybe turn this air out and get it out away from my feet. And that really was not so much the case. At least it didn't seem that way when I was riding the bike. What wound up happening, I had the muffler packing in on the other side, and I didn't have the muffler packing in on this side. And especially when I slowed down after running the bike at high power and everything was really hot, I mean, my right toes felt like they were going to freaking burn up. And the other side, on the shifter side, I had already had the muffler packing in place, so that side was fine. So basically, what I learned is the muffler packing does a good job. The flashing just makes it look prettier. I don't know if I could say that, but anyway, I figured that I would take this stuff off and kit it up, maybe, now that it's all done after this experiment, and then put it on before I take my trip. And now I'm actually thinking, it took a little while to put on, and I might just leave it on there and take it off if I ever sell the bike. I'm not very much into, I love the way the bike looks, but stuff that's down low like that, I mean, I just want to be comfortable when I ride the bike in the Texas heat. And what might happen is too, like if I weren't taking a trip with the bike, I would never put that stuff on, because I can just ride around the heat and be back home earlier, and not ride on the interstate, and then you don't really need it. So I can't imagine anybody would want to do that. But I also put wings on the bike, and the wings are great. But to tell you the truth, going down the highway in record heat for comfort, this does more for me than the wings. Of course, you can put your feet up on the highway pegs if you don't want to do this. But I envision myself riding in the real intense heat, and then riding through Amarillo around noontime, and it could be over 100 degrees if it's record heat. And my feet were getting so hot at high power with the 6x6 pipes that I would be probably on the interstate in relatively decent traffic and still trying to put my feet up on the pegs on the highway pegs, and I don't really want to do that. Additionally, it's freaking amazing, but when I rode the bike like this, there was very little difference when I was on the highway between me being on this peg or this peg, as far as comfort for burning burning my feet. So anyway, the next thing I did was I said, well, if I'm going to go down the highway in record heat, I definitely want to try wings. I don't really like the looks of the wings that are manufactured, and they kind of cost a little bit of money, and I hate to spend money for something that I don't like. Now, I made my own wings, and they're really quick to remove. You just remove them with 2 hose clamps. And what they are is Memphis shade lowers. And it's funny because the Memphis shade lowers that they make for this bike, and these work great for me. I had a real buffeting problem coming over the tank, and it would hit my chest, and it would freaking want to rip my helmet off. I ride with an open-faced helmet, and it would, like, on highway speeds, it would, before I put the lowers on, it would take my helmet and try to pull it off my head. And my helmet would, like, go up and down and keep banging on my forehead. And it's like, it wouldn't take long at all before you had a freaking headache. I mean, it was terrible. And, you know, it's like, how do these stupid little things work? Yeah, they definitely work, and they keep the air from rushing over top of the tank. And they do work with this setup, and the two things might work in conjunction. My wings are pretty small, but they also, I believe, they stick out probably further than the aftermarket wings that people buy. And I mean, these stupid things, they start cooling you at about 15 miles an hour. It's just freaking amazing that they can do what they do. So what I wound up doing with my wings is I adjusted them, and going down the highway, these stupid little wings were not only helping my legs a great deal, but they were also giving me some air up my chest and they were like keeping my whole body cooler for sure. And what I actually found, normally I'm real small, and I'm not a super advanced rider by any means, and I kind of like to keep my foot like right in tight, and then my knees kind of are like right up against the side of the tank. And you know, the fat lady loves to drop into turns and loves to be handled. And it kind of makes me feel like I'm one with the bike and I can make any turn or whatever. But what I found worked best with my wings for just cool riding down the road, I would actually put my foot out here. And in the out position, it kind of opened me up in here. And the wing takes beautiful, smooth, clean air, and it runs it right down here so that when my foot is out here, I get a big blast of cool air going like inside of my foot, kind of protecting me from a lot of the heat. Then at the same time, the wing being way out here, it puts a secondary stream, which is a lesser stream because I guess of the wing effect, and that kind of goes right into your leg. So it's like this stream isolates you from the hot stuff, and then also gives you clean air to the front of your body. And then this stream directly cools your legs. I was freaking amazed. I just can't believe it. And this thing costs like, you know, these lowers cost like $26 delivered to your house from Memphis Shades. And you know, it's a couple of hose clamps, a little bit of PVC pipe, and a PVC elbow. And what I did was I coped the PVC pipe, basically cut it right down the middle, and then cut this arc to match the arc on the engine guards. And of course, it's hose clamped, it's junk, and whatnot, but it comes off really, really easy. You can aim your wings. I mean, they're solid. They don't move around when you're going down the road at 75 or 80. I was amazed at the wings, and I think that they also work together in some effect with the lowers, where the lowers kind of feed them some more air. I don't know. In a sailboat, we call it like the main sail feeding the head sail feeding the main, and But for something really, really cheap, if you don't have wings and you want to try them or something like that, this would work. I can't imagine anybody doing this unless they're like me and they don't care if their bike is but freaking ugly. But this shit really works too. It's just crazy. So anyway, a little more comment on the wings, and the Honda, what I'll call it is radiator discharge diverter. So my bike does not have this diverter installed, and I'm not planning on installing it. I believe that it probably would discharge in the heat from the radiator out the side. I think it probably would affect the wings and make the air thrown at me from the wings a little bit longer. And I'm retired, and I purposely do not ride in traffic. I mean, to me, that thing is for somebody who's riding the bike. Maybe they're riding the bike on the interstate, on their way home from work when it's really, really hot, and then they get off the interstate and the fan comes on the bike and they're sitting in traffic, and it's supposed to keep them from burning up when they're sitting at the light. And that's kind of, as soon as I saw that thing, that's what I thought about it. But I realized that there's some other ideas of what that thing does. So I tried to take a little bit of a look at that, and it's impossible to know exactly what the designer did, but what I wound up doing is I just to see what's going on. I just took a just a double probe thermocouple thermometer, and I mounted it on top of the bike, and I think I'm going to have a picture of that on this thread. So it was mounted right here, and I had thermocouple number 1 on the crossbar, and I believe it's a crossbar that holds the fan, but I don't really know. So that thermocouple was right behind almost dead center on the fan. And then the second thermocouple was basically on the wires, just in the center of the drivetrain, just about an inch above the engine case. So, I rode down the road, and as expected, the bike was cool, and it had to come up to temperature. Obviously to me, this thermocouple was always cooler than this thermocouple. Okay, and obviously the driver for the heat in the water, cooling water, comes from here, the water jacket next to the cylinders. But this is a big, massive case, if you will, and what the temperature indicators, and I mean, you can just, if you got an IR, you can just shoot the frickin' thing when you get home or whatever. But it basically is like a big heat sink. So it doesn't change temperature as fast as stuff that's out and light and small, like carburetors and things like that. So basically, as expected, you drive down the road and, she starts heating up, and then the thermostat opens. I found on this bike, I mean, the cooling is great, and the fan doesn't come on. It's got plenty of cooling. In fact, I used to size heat exchangers as test stand engineer for Bell Helicopter, and when I sized a heat exchanger, it was strictly for maximum horsepower, because the transmissions are on a stand in a fixed room, and the heat sink is component cooling water, so you use water-to-water heat exchangers. So you don't have this change in airflow. You do have the change in air in oil flow. I'm pretty sure the oil pump is, well, you probably don't even have much of a change in oil flow on those suckers, because the lubrication is so critical. I wasn't responsible for driving for designing them, but I don't need to get into that. Let me stop. So anyway, with this sucker, as you start coming up to highway speed, I was surprised. I was actually thinking that the air temperature coming off the back of the radiator at 75, 80 miles an hour, I was thinking was going to be, something like 140 degrees or something like that. Figuring that it did not need all of that air to cool things down. But actually, the air coming off, I mean, it probably was like about 165 or something like that. Basically, the delta T between here and here gets greater with speed. So once everything's synced in and the engine's up to temperature, and so what happens typically when you're just riding, if you're driving at 40 miles an hour or something like that, an inch off the top of the case is probably going to be 20 degrees cooler than the outflow from the radiator. So when the time that the system is most taxed is going to be, you're running it at high speed, high output and whatnot, you're running 75 miles an hour. You get off the interstate and you slow down. Maybe have to immediately get into lights and stuff like that, and you're freaking not moving at all. Okay, that's when the temperature goes up, and if there's no airflow on this guy, it's going to start approaching the temperature of the case, and the delta T is going to go to, could go as low as 10 or 15 degrees or something like that. The fan kicks on, she gets nice and cooled down, and then everything goes back, and maybe you'll get like a 20 degree delta T or whatever. So anyway, what I'm getting at, and another thing interesting, if you I'm sure, guys, I can't tell. I'm sure some of the guys that really have taken this bike apart and know what's going on will know. But to me, this is taking the fan air and blowing it out the sides, like here, which would be great when you stopped at the light after coming off the interstate if you're getting hot sitting at the light. But actually, I think some other radiator air bypasses that and goes over the engine. So kind of where I'm getting at is all of these components in here, to me, they're underhood components that are rated for at least 250 degrees. And not having that thing over there in here is not going to do anything to your components because, I mean, even if that were blocking the air coming from the radiator into this area and that was allowing ambient temperature air at 100 degrees to come into this area, with this big heat source here and the fact that all of this stuff right in this location pretty much follows this temperature, I mean, really, the radiator air is actually cooling these components that are 250, 300 degree components. So another interesting thing that I kind of learned while I was looking at this thing is, so like, this is the brake switch right here. Honda's got this little piece of sheet metal in there that's the heat shield for this brake switch. And that sits between the brake switch and the, I'm not sure what header that is. I'm going to say that's the number 2. But anyway, I've ridden this thing for 4,500 miles in Texas, and it gets hot as hell, and that brake switch has been fine. I'm sure there are guys that have ridden their Valks for forever and not had a problem with that brake switch. But basically, my only point is, yeah, your wires are going to dry out, your hoses are going to dry out, you're going to have to replace components from time to time, but not having the radiator cowling in there is not going to affect the life of your equipment. It's really for creature comfort, and if you're not doing the kind of riding that makes you feel like you need one of them, I would actually feel like it's taking away from your wings. In fact, my wings work so well and they are so clean. I've actually heard that some of the aftermarket wings that are sold, the air's too turbulent coming off them, and they're a little bit hard to direct and not as efficient. I don't know. Obviously, everybody's got different opinions, and I've got lots of opinions, so who really cares? But I just wanted to kind of put this information out there just in case it might help someone. Okay, so another thing that I do, so I'm going to put a picture on how I use these togs as frog togs as chaps on my legs. I also tried these light cargo pants from Duluth Trading, and they're actually pretty expensive pants. They've got all sorts of pockets and stuff. Certainly would not be good to slide down the road with. They're going to give you like next to no protection. I was a little bit disappointed with them in that it makes it real easy if I was going to jump into a restroom at a gas station and put those frog togs on. I would just drop them down. They drop down really easy, and I would have these guys on, and I would tuck my. I wear tall, thin socks under my white socks when I'm riding in the summertime, and I tuck the frog togs into my tall white socks, and then slip them under my shorts, and then slip them under the waist strap of my shorts. And with this nice light pair of pants, it's really easy to do all of that stuff and not even have to sit down or anything like that. The problem with them that I found is, and I would recommend probably nobody buy those, but when you put you go in 75 and you put your feet up on the highway peg, I had to tuck them into my boots, and even with them tucked into my boots at 75, 80, they wind up blowing up, and it's like you're wearing shorts. So what I'm going to do, if I did a trip like this, I would probably bring those guys with me, and when I go down to the lake, I'll use them. I'll definitely have a pair of jeans with me. But what I'm actually going to do, I wear 511 commando boots, and what I'm going to do is have my wife take her $2,500 sewing machine and sew about 4 or 5 buttonholes in the bottom of each leg. And then I don't use the top eyes on my commando boots, so I'm probably going to just tie those suckers around the top of my boot so that they can't come up. Additionally, like when I like to ride in the real heat with the heavy sun and stuff, of course, sunscreen on my face, but I always just wear a white long sleeve shirt over top of that vest. And the cooling vest is the main thing. I mean, it's probably all you'd need 90% of the time. The only time I would expect to put on the chaps is if I was running on a record heat day, and it would be the last thing that I would do, if you will. So it's kind of like if it was a record heat day and I got up at 5 in the morning and I was running out through Amarillo, I'd probably be putting those things on, maybe lunchtime if it was a record heat day, and then things would start easing up as I got out into New Mexico and started climbing the high mesa, and things started drying out and whatnot, I would imagine. But anyway, that's kind of what I've learned in this little experiment, and I may be all wet. I can't imagine anybody's going to do this to their 6x6 pipes, but that's what I did anyway. So, thank you.